Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We've got a very interesting guest today. I've spent a little bit of time digging around on her website and pretty fascinated by what she's doing. She'll tell us about that here in a second. But her name is Kim Bennett. Kim is the founder and CEO of AtlasGuru. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you here. We're going to spend most of this conversation probably discussing kind of how you got to the point where you're at. But before we go there, if you give us kind of like the 30-second, maybe 60-second elevator pitch for what is AtlasGuru, just so the listeners can kind of be keyed in on that, and then we'll come back and discuss it more.
Sure. Well, yeah, so AtlasGuru, we are really a modern travel company. And what that means is that we take travelers' stories and travelers who share their travel experiences on AtlasGuru. And we take all that knowledge and information, and other travelers can build their AI travel itineraries using all that great information and build out their dream trips using AI. And then we also now are layering in travel advisors to help make those trips come to life. So we kind of offer a little bit of everything for everyone.
Very, very cool. I appreciate that. We're going to come back because there's a lot of interesting things that you're doing. So we're definitely going to come back to that. And I already have a few questions, but I don't want to get too distracted because we could spend an hour just talking about your website and the process. But I find that it's the story behind the person doing the stuff is really kind of what our listeners want to hear. Before I hit the record button, I mentioned to you, it's kind of that conversation. It's like, oh, you have a technology travel modern website. How did you get into that? So we're going to go back. We're going to do that. We're going to go back as far as we need to go to kind of figure out how this all came about. And sometimes we go back to young childhood and other times not. So how far should we go back?
We don't have to go that far back.
Well, you say that. We'll see. Go ahead.
No. I mean, I guess my love of travel has always been there. I've always been very curious. I've always loved exploring new cities, new destinations, jumping on a plane and going somewhere exciting. And my background is really more corporate America. So I actually have a pretty traditional background when it comes to working in big companies doing marketing and advertising. So I spent many, many years doing that.
But I'll tell you what, though, because I heard you say, no, we don't need to go to my childhood. And then immediately I heard you say, I've always had a love for travel and exploring and curiosity. And I'm guessing some of that probably started when a little younger. So if you don't mind, how do you think that? Because not everybody has that love of travel. A lot of people have never left the city they were born in.
Yeah.
So help me understand how you got into that.
I mean, it was more, I literally moved out of my parents' home the day after high school graduation, headed into the big city of Seattle, which was my hometown, really. I now live outside of Philadelphia, but I mean, there's so much more to explore and see. And I definitely had the bug of jumping in a car or a plane or a train and wanting to see different things.
But were you exposed to that before you moved out? Okay.
Not at all.
That's where I was going because sometimes we have these conversations like, well, it's because somebody gave me National Geographic magazine and my parents never traveled. They never wanted to go anywhere, but I always had that. So when you were growing up, you weren't traveling. Were you thinking about going? Was there something that inspired you that as soon as you could, you went and did it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we all have these, different ideas of what is different from their home, space. And that was for me. I wanted to get out of my small suburban hometown and try something new. And so No, we did not necessarily. We were not a traveling family, but National Geographic, of course, I grew up with that. In fact, that was my first career idea, was to be a National Geographic photographer.
Okay.
So
it's all coming out.
Yes, I love National Geographic, and I love photography, and that was kind of an early start for me to be a photographer. I actually spent 2 years studying photography, so just having that, just different vision of what you're seeing through the lens of a camera is very exciting, and I wanted to be part of that. But
did you envision that before you moved out of the house, though?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there was something going on there.
Definitely. So yeah, no, my comfort zone is to be kind of slightly uncomfortable. I'm fine with that. I like change. I'm okay with sometimes being a little, things disruptive at times. And sometimes your best travel stories come from things that don't always work out as planned. Yeah.
I used to kind of think that was just something weird about me. I grew up, we were pretty advanced. My parents, my father especially, was kind of that type, and we would go do some weird stuff. But most of the people I was around, I didn't feel like that they got it. They didn't get me. I didn't get them. And then when I started working in the travel business, I obviously got exposed to more people like that. But I'll tell you, with the show here, the podcast, I've had an opportunity to have about 100 conversations now. And I see the thread. It's like, I feel like almost everybody I've had a conversation with, it's that desire to be uncomfortable and the willingness to be uncomfortable. Maybe that, seeking variety, or just seeking, just exploring the curiosity. I think that's pretty normal for people that work in the industry. And then there's so many other people that don't travel at all. And I'm just like, I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, travel's very uncomfortable. And I do get surprised when it's something that is such a part of my life. And I do find it surprising when that's not everybody's life.
Right.
But yeah, no, I like different, and I like to seek out different and to explore different. I'm not necessarily somebody on the road 300 days a year at all. I also like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So that, I'm fine with, 6 flights a year kind of thing. And, a couple international trips a year is great. But for me, it's also part of the daydreaming of exploring different areas and cities, and thinking about, what's next is, of course, just as fun as the trip itself.
Absolutely. So let's go back. You mentioned you'd studied photography for a couple of years. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of stage of your life, and after high school,
Yeah.
moved out, and then what were you doing?
Yeah, so I did. I studied photography for a couple of years, didn't make a penny. I did. That's not true. I did have a little bit of some small jobs from it. But then I kind of, I didn't want to say hung up the dream, but I shifted into marketing for a small company. And then from there is where I was really introduced to more the marketing side of things and working for different companies in marketing. And actually, I really loved it because marketing kind of combines the idea of the business and what you're trying to achieve from a business perspective, and then how do you communicate to customers. And so it actually was a fun problem for me to solve. And you get to add in the creative elements to that. So actually, marketing and advertising was a great career for me. I really enjoyed it, and loved my time with that. So I then slowly ended up kind of putting away the camera and doing more of the business side of things. But,
were those early marketing jobs, were you working with clients in the travel and tourism space, or did that come later?
Later, retail. I always worked in retail companies. So I've worked for Amazon, back in the heyday, and also Nordstrom in their corporate marketing. I worked for Martha Stewart in New York City on her retail business. So no, most of it was all in the retail space. And the travel side of things really came, after almost 20 years of working in corporate America. I've always loved travel. And I felt there was a real need for a better way for travelers to share their trip reports and to share their travel stories. And I was always struggling with building my own itineraries and thinking about, I only have 12 days off. This is my one big vacation of the year. How am I going to put this itinerary together? And I would dive into travel forums, right? I'd go down the rabbit hole of TripAdvisor or Reddit or Rick Steves and go through their travel forums and kind of read all the trip reports from travelers and kind of piece together, what is the best way to put this itinerary together. And I was like, this is kind of a crappy, in the modern digital marketing space, this is kind of a crummy way of being able to cobble through. And so that was kind of the genesis of AtlasGuru, is where travelers can upload and share their itineraries and trip reports and share their travel stories in a much more beautiful format. And that really was kind of the birth of AtlasGuru.
When did that happen? When did you launch AtlasGuru?
Just before COVID.
Okay.
So
Congratulations.
Thanks. I mean, COVID is not the ideal time to launch a travel business, but the silver
tell us
lining,
the other side of it. Right?
I mean, it also gives you an opportunity to look at all the different bugs and different, like, what are users looking for? I was kind of able to launch quietly just because the whole world was doing something different at that time. And so, it was a time to do like a real soft launch, and that's okay. I feel like it kind of set us back a little bit for a year, but I think it is what it is.
I'm going to dig into your personal life. You can decide how you want to answer it. But at that time, because sometimes people are just like, okay, quit my job, start my new business, and I need to figure out how to generate cash flow within the first 2 months. And COVID presumably would disrupt that plan.
Yeah.
Were you still working on other projects while you launched, or were you just like,
well, I mean,
oh man, got to eat ramen for a while?
Yeah, I ate ramen for a while. So no, I mean, I had a business plan for at least 5 years. So I sat on it for a long time. I saved my paycheck for many, many years, thinking about, okay, I want to launch this business. What can I invest? Can I go for it? And so it was a slow transition. I didn't just wake up one day and say, I quit my job and I'm going to do something else. It didn't work like that. No, it was a very slow transition. It takes a long time to launch a business. And somebody I once spoke to said, running a business truly is a marathon. You are not going to make profitability in 2 months. That's for sure. So, it's a long runway that you got to think about. And somebody once said, nothing even gets interesting until year 5 into your business. So I was like, oh, geez. So, you got to think of it as a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Well, you've had a couple things that popped up. One we've already discussed was COVID. But then also, I'm curious about kind of the AI part of it, because that's a huge, huge shift that came in. Honestly, when I heard you kind of describing your thought process and accumulating stories and finding better ways for people to build out their own itineraries, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense for AI with AI. But you actually started this before that tool was even there. So I'm just curious. I'd love to hear from your perspective, like that business plan that you put together. What were the major shifts that maybe you didn't expect or that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think original was that this was a content site, right? Like this was a user-generated content site where users could share their travel stories, and it was open source. Anybody, and even today, anybody today can upload their trips and share their travel stories. So that was really the original business plan. We have almost 1,000 itineraries and trip reports now on AtlasGuru, and so we are a pretty robust content site at this point. But when Gen AI really started to open up really to the public, where anybody could, really an open source, it is like a gift handed to me, because the beauty of taking Gen AI is that it can work with existing data and search it and repackage it in a way, whatever way that you put prompts to it with. So we have all this content and storytelling and data. And now using ChatGPT, the software ChatGPT, really creates another opportunity for travelers to be able to build an itinerary based off the content that's on AtlasGuru. So it's just this perfect fit.
Was your revenue plan in the beginning, was that going to be based on advertising?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. But that's shifted, right?
It's shifted because now we're actually working with travel advisors and making this more of a modern AI travel advising company. And so where I see kind of a benefit in the marketplace is that people want to have the fun part of planning their trips. They really enjoy itinerary building and planning and kind of thought ideation. but it's the now, how do I make this happen? I mean, candidly, just booking a hotel is actually really simple. It's been done. The web has created this where it's a one button click to book a hotel. That's not the problem that we're solving for. It's okay, I have this amazing itinerary, but how do I make it, a little extra special? Or I have some questions about this. What should I tweak this a little bit? So this is where we will bring in the experts. If you want to have a travel advisor kind of take it and run with it, we can now put you in touch with the appropriate travel advisor. And kind of the other third layer that we are working on now is sort of a hybrid model where it's an assisted model. Maybe you don't want to work with a dedicated travel advisor. It might be too high touch, might be too white glove. I don't need all of that. But I do have some questions. I do want somebody to help me put my transportation together, along with maybe, can they do the hotels, the transportation, and kind of pull the final piece together? That's really what's coming for AtlasGuru.
So what I kind of hear you saying is somebody can come to the website, look for some inspiration on some of the stories, use the AI tool to, I guess, not sure the word I'm looking for. You probably know the word, but to bring something together that really is, let's say, completely unique. And then maybe if they so choose, share that with the travel advisor. So let's say they want to go to Colombia and they put together an itinerary, and then you've got a relationship with a great travel advisor that maybe specializes in Colombia. I don't know. So then that AI generated itinerary goes to the travel planner, and then the travel planner basically works with the client to make it happen, maybe with some tweaks, probably with some tweaks, I'm assuming.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Very cool.
Exactly. I mean, I think what makes it fun is, I don't know if you've played around with Perplexity or ChatGPT or Claude or any of those AI. I mean, it's pretty fun to build itineraries using them. What makes us a little bit different is that it first searches all of AtlasGuru's content. And we have, for example, we have a lot of Colombia content. So we have a lot of travelers that have shared their trips on Colombia. So there's already great knowledge there. We already have that human knowledge already on AtlasGuru. So ChatGPT is first going to that data source as opposed to just out on the web. So that kind of adds a little more richness to the itinerary that is being built for that traveler.
Okay, I got that. I'm curious, what's the incentive or motivation for people to share their stories?
There's a couple of different people. It's one, the travel zealots that love to kind of self-publish. They create blogs on their trips, but a blog is a little bit of a heavy lift. So it is those people that just love to share. It's also influencers that also don't want to manage a blog. So we kind of have a little bit of everybody, but it's definitely those that love storytelling and want to share their travel experiences, and then they can send it out to their friends.
That's where I was. Okay. So it sounds like what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is you've basically set up a tool to make it easy, efficient, enjoyable to share their experience, as opposed to writing a blog post, or as opposed to just trying to post it on Facebook. They can put together a cool looking itinerary and then say, hey, look what I did. They share the link onto their social media or whatever, which then drives people to your website. Pretty brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's cool.
Yeah.
And boy, I've got so many questions. And I'm thinking of other folks like myself that are curious about travel, work in the business. I do marketing for travel, so for tourism. So it's very fascinating to me. And I suspect there's other people listening as well that would probably, the question they would ask you if they were sitting across from you is, I'm a DMC in Colombia or whatever. How do I partner with you? What does that look like? So what would you like to say to potential business partners that are listening to this?
Yeah, it's actually, our platform is great for that. So we have partnered with a few actually. So Intrepid Travel. So we've had some other New Paths expeditions who do a lot in South America. They're fantastic.
I've had guests from both of those on here. Yeah, I get it. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So, we do have content from those folks where they can then showcase their itineraries, their trips. they can, share everything. Another one is Cherish Tours, which is like a women-led and kind of female-centric travel company. So they're fantastic as well. So what they can do is they can upload their itineraries and trips, and then we provide a link for booking, and then users can then go directly to them. So it's also a really great platform for different destinations to share about their destinations on Atlas Guru.
So tell me, if, let's say, Intrepid uploads an itinerary, one of your users looks at the itinerary, maybe looks at a few itineraries from a variety of sources, uses the AI tool, it mixes and matches stuff. When AI gets involved, does that itinerary, like, no longer it's marked as an Intrepid itinerary? So what happens then as far as your business relationship with Intrepid? How does Intrepid benefit when somebody uses AI to modify an itinerary?
Sure. I mean, right now, yes, we don't have some sort of co-branding on AI with Intrepid. We could, absolutely. So we could showcase Intrepid in a way that makes sense for them. So that's, again, from a marketing standpoint, we can wrap it and promote it and market it and that sort of thing. So there's lots of different pieces that we could do together and customize it for a destination.
Okay. I'm going to ask this exactly the way I think I'd ask it if I was on a business development call with you. Somebody uses AI, creates an itinerary they really like, they want to go to Colombia, and now you're getting ready to hand them off to a travel planner. Who's the travel planner? How is that decided? And how do I, as a DMC, or as probably not a DMC, but maybe if I'm at Intrepid, how do I get connected with your client?
Sure. I mean, all Intrepid or a DMC has to do is tell me what customers are they interested in? Who are they looking for? Are they trying to sell more of Peru, or are they trying to sell more of Colombia? And then I'm happy to put them in touch with the appropriate people. So we can do that. You just tell me, what is it that they are looking to solve for? Mm-hmm. And we would be able to take leads and send them that way.
Okay. And then the financial end of that can be discussed when you do have that call with their business development manager. But I appreciate that, because I do believe that a lot of the folks that listen to I know that a lot of people I've interviewed on the show would love to have a conversation with you. And I know that a lot of the people I've interviewed on the show listen to the show. So that's why I wanted to get that out there, just, because it's all about making some connections. And I have a couple clients that I do marketing stuff for. That I'll be chatting with them as soon as I get off this call.
Definitely. And it's a very qualified client, right? They've already done some of the homework. So they've already said, I'm interested in about 7 days in Colombia. I want to go to a coffee region. I'm looking for also including some beach time. So what's great is you already have some insight as to what that customer or traveler is looking for. So it's, you already have pre-qualified that customer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm curious about kind of what your view is on, I don't know, the demographics or whatever, but of your typical, because earlier you were talking about, you used to spend a lot of time going here and there, putting together, I've got 12 days. How am I going to make the most use of my time? That's one mindset in this space. And then there's other people that I've got 12 days and I don't really want to customize. I don't want to do that. So traditionally they went to a travel planner and said, I've got 12 days. Give me a few options. I'll pick the one that seems the most appealing. So I think there's two different types, but what I'm sensing is you're kind of bringing that together a little bit. So what are your thoughts on your typical, user of your service, your clients? What do you call them? Readers?
Travelers.
That's a good word. I'll go with
travelers. No, and there really isn't necessarily typical, but I do think what is helpful is that it's not necessarily just pure demographic. It's also, what is it that they're looking for? They have kids. Are they an adventure traveler? Is vegan food important? What are some of the things that are important to them? And they can put kind of those, what we call prompts, basically in, and that will help guide with, how will this trip look to them? So, and again, nothing is, I do believe that there is a human element to all of this. I don't think that technology is going to solve everything for everyone. I think that this is a good starting point for travelers. And if they are like, I don't want to do anything, when you say I don't want to do anything, I think a traveler has an idea. They know that they want to go somewhere sunny and warm. They have 12 days off. This is their home city, so it has to be flown out of there. Like, they have some idea of what they're looking for. And so I think that is helpful information, obviously, to then hand to a travel advisor. And it does kind of force the traveler to think a little bit about like, well, where are you kind of thinking and what are some ideas that you've come to play? And again, having so much content on the site, they can play around and look at Colombia. Oh, what's Peru all about? So we have, we can kind of help ideate for those travelers.
Well, and you mentioned the human connection. Even if they're having a conversation with the chatbot is pulling stories that, travelers have uploaded their personal human experiences and drawing from that. And honestly, I think there's some amazing travel planners out there. And I think that the best ones are the ones that ask the right questions.
Definitely.
But there's still, sometimes we miss things, right? As humans, we get going on one direction and then we forget to ask them about dietary. I'm just using a random thing. We forget to even have that conversation around food. They book a trip to Colombia and they don't eat meat or rice or bananas.
Right.
It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Where, with the AI, that can be an interesting conversation. And honestly, I think, I'm just curious what your thoughts are. One of the things I noticed when I started messing around with ChatGPT was I was finding myself feeling like I had to be polite and that I had to be nice. And I didn't want ChatGPT to have to work too hard. If it gave me a result and I didn't like it, I almost felt like it did what I asked, but I didn't really mean that. So I felt weird. I was almost to the point of saying, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, can you please go do it again? And that's because we're used to working, with colleagues or maybe employees, someone on your team, where those sensitivities get in the way. And once I got comfortable with what I was doing, I was like, I don't care. Like, nope, I don't like it. Give me 10 more, give me 10 more, give me 10 more. And I felt no shame, no guilt about it. And then recently I've got another friend that does some AI in the travel space as well. And I had an opportunity to play around with one of his chatbots. And I caught myself just kind of testing it, just saying things that I'm not sure I would have said to a human being that were important to me. So for example, mentioning specific medical issues that, people in my family have. And I was able to say, okay, my son, this, and this is important. And these are his sensitivities when we travel. He's got autism. And I realized I was pretty comfortable having that conversation with the chatbot. And I was frankly blown away by how sensitive the response was. It was like, oh, this chatbot actually understands what autism is. And I'm sure a lot of great travel planners do as well. But that's just an example of I can work through some of this stuff without feeling weird, without feeling embarrassed, and get to the point where, okay, now I've got some ideas that make sense. And then I can absolutely work with a human travel planner to put it together. And I don't know, do you see that as well? Is that a good example of?
Yeah, I mean, we're not quite at that level of sophistication yet on AtlasGuru, but I mean, we are actually actively working on ways where users can edit the itinerary that was created and continue that like ongoing discussion. Mm-hmm. But I agree 100%. I think it's why people used to meaning that they still do, Google, medical questions as opposed to even asking your doctor, which is crazy, right? But we all do it. Mm-hmm. And we're too uncomfortable and embarrassed to ask the real human about it. We all do it. Why do you think WebMD is so, huge, right? So,
or we ask Google what our wife is thinking.
I mean, it's crazy.
Why did she say this? Or why did he do that? It's like, okay.
But it is
instead of just asking them.
Shockingly, I mean, I know there's several camps that people are very nervous about AI, but I have to say every single month or so, it is getting smarter and smarter, and it does understand tone. And the more you put in, so if you say, I'm female, I'm from the United States, I'm doing this, I like this, it does seem to get much better results, right? It is wild. And it's the Wild West. It really is. What we see today is not the same experience that we will see in 1 year from now.
Well, it definitely has changed because I remember when it first came out, it was interesting. It was fun, but it sounded like the tone was weird. And it's like, this is just, if I were to use ChatGPT to write a book, I'm going to have to do a lot of editing, a lot of work on, because it just sounds that. But I'll tell you what, I've been building itineraries for my clients and blog posts using some ChatGPT. And it's like, wow.
Pretty good.
It's like pretty good. Yeah. I'm not sure I would notice that was, you still got to work it and edit it. But I think you're right. It's about the input. It's about the question. And I
And it's
remember,
all about the data. And that's where Atlas Guru comes in, is that, again, we have so much content in certain countries, and the better the data, the better the results. And another really fun technology tool that we've played with, and not sure how we're going to use it, is Google's Notebook LM, which can take any content and turn it into a podcast. It is wild. We have one. I did it for a trip that I took to Scotland, and I dropped in all the content from my Scotland trip report into Google's Notebook LM. And the output is like an 8-minute podcast of two people talking about a trip report from Scotland. It is wild.
wow.
And Visit Scotland, you were talking about, working with countries and DMOs. Like Visit Scotland, helped guided me in some ideas. And there's a little call out and shout out to Visit Scotland and saying like, hey, this trip was also inspired by Visit Scotland. So it's pretty fun. It's neat. It sounds like a podcast. It's a little hokey. There's some things that aren't, perfect. And it did take some liberties that I actually had to tweak on. It said I summited the top of the highest mountain in Scotland. We did not summit it, but we did hike it. So it took some liberties. So I had to tweak it. So it's, it's still weird and buggy, but it's pretty fun.
It'll be, and like you said, it's changing so fast that, in a year, I'm open to going with technology. So I don't want to say in another year I won't be able to have a podcast because it's all going to be AI, but maybe in another year I won't need to be sitting here in front of a computer screen. Your persona can have a conversation with my persona, and it's all AI, and then we just go back and listen to it to make sure we're not embarrassed, and then we publish it. I don't know.
I mean, you never know. It is pretty fun and wild, and it's just, some of it is just like not sure what to do with this yet, kind of technology, but there could be a use case for it in a different way. So I think it's just a fun, interesting, another tool in the toolbox.
And it may be obvious to any of my listeners that also read the show notes. The show notes for this podcast are going to be, AI generated. And it's not that hard to tell they're AI generated, but at the same time, for me to go back and to try and take notes as I'm having this conversation with you, or to try and have them make any sense, would just be very, very time consuming. And it wouldn't be, there's that point of diminishing returns. It wouldn't be that much better than what the AI notes are. And, and then the whole transcript, and you can use AI to actually edit the words out of the transcript. And it's pretty amazing.
The one thing that I do tell people, who are uncomfortable with the idea of AI, is I do still tell all travelers, like, go directly to the train website to check the train schedule, to check your flight schedule. There are things that if you are really needing data that has to be precise and, are looking for driving directions and things like that, go to the source. So, but if you're looking for ideas and conversation and inspiration, AI is amazing.
I think that's the best use for it, really, is ideas. I mentioned earlier, I said, give me 10 more, give me 10 more, give me 10 more. And that's an example of me just looking for ideas for the title of a blog post, or for the name of my business, Big World Made Small, whatever. There was some of that, give me taglines, and they give you ideas that you may never even thought. It was like, wow, I really like that tagline, but actually I'm not really interested in taglines right now. I'm interested, and then you shift directions, and you can go anywhere, and you don't have to feel like you're wasting anybody's time. You don't have to feel like anybody's judging you for being ADHD scatterbrain, because that's definitely defines me. And I can just mess around with it all day long. And nobody's like, Jason, would you please just decide what you want to do? Leave me alone and let me move on with my life. So it's good in that sense. I do want to touch on kind of just the people around you. Kind of talked a little bit about, when you moved out of the house, your parents weren't really into traveling, adventure, that type of stuff. You moved out, you started traveling. How has that impacted? I mean, what are personal relationships like you? Have you figured out how to balance that out? Do you have people in your life that are supportive, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the travel angle, I'm lucky that I have a partner. My husband also enjoys travel, not to the extent that I do. it does kind of stress him out a little bit to have too many trips on the calendar, but he is also up for pretty much most adventures, and we're actually pretty compatible travel partners. But then I also have friends that are also up for travels. And that's hard to find. It's hard to find different friends who can go with you on different trips. And everybody's at different life stages. So that's not always an easy thing to find for a partner. I've done solo traveling too. So I'm very comfortable traveling by myself. It doesn't bother me. I actually prefer to travel with friends, but I shouldn't say that. I'll do certain things by myself.
Careful. You don't know who's going to be listening to this.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, now that I think about it, no, but I do love
I love traveling with my friends. I love traveling with my husband.
No, but there are certain things like I love watching tennis. And so I'll go to New York, the US Open, and I'll go by myself because I get to see and go and do whatever I want. And I get to, take the time and plan it out the way I want it. And, it's probably the control freak in me. But of course, I enjoy going with friends, and I have, but I don't mind going alone because then I can do whatever I want. So,
right.
Well, so I enjoy solo travel too.
And when you do travel with your husband or your friends, do either you or they think that you're always working on the trip? Because I heard you say, your trip report. I'm sure you do a trip report every time you go somewhere. So does that get in the way? Does that create conflict?
No, it never gets in the way because it's easy to do. I am typically the one who is the driver of the itinerary. I am typically the one that comes up with the ideas, and then I present it to my friends. Yeah.
No way. I can't imagine that about you.
No surprise there. Everybody knows that about me. You
built a business around a trip planning website. Okay, yeah. I can see you driving the train.
Yes, I do.
If I were to ask you, what kind of personality do you think you have? How would you answer that question?
Personality. Ooh, I would say positive.
Well, yeah, okay.
Adventurous. Cautiously adventurous. I don't skydive or anything like that, but I definitely love exploring different areas, and I love the outdoors. Most trips, I like to have some sort of outdoor component to it, like hiking or something like that.
It's interesting.
Active. I like to be active.
It's interesting because you don't always meet somebody that really likes adventure, likes active travel, and also would be interested in having a conversation about AI or website design or call to actions or email marketing campaigns. And I've noticed, because I'm one of those types, that I actually really enjoy that stuff, which is why I do what I do. But at the same time, I recognize it's unusual. A lot of the guests I have on the show, it's like super passionate about spending time with clients in the field and sharing experiences, but then they've got somebody else on the team that actually keeps things running.
Yeah, the technology side. Well, that's why, because I've worked in marketing and technology for many years. Seattle was like the tech boom, right, in the 90s. So, but it's also an incredible outdoor city. Yeah. So skiing, hiking, boating. The Pacific Northwest is incredible. And going up to Canada and that whole Whistler I love up there. The outdoors, that I was born into. So it's always being in the outdoors, always outside, fishing, hiking, skiing, all of it.
Okay. Yep. There's some elements there that came from your childhood.
Yeah. So that is definitely rooted in my childhood and has been. And that's very culturally what the Pacific Northwest is all about. So then you layer in technology. So you have that combination. So, that's like the home of REI, right? So and Microsoft and Starbucks and Amazon. And so you have that combination of tech plus outdoors. That's just the cultural norm in Seattle.
I wonder, because with marketing, some of it can be very interesting. That all depends on what your view of interesting is. For me, website design, trying new things, learning new things is fascinating. If you want to pay me to do Google Analytics for more than a few weeks, I'm like, or the spreadsheets, I'm just like, maybe that's for somebody else. So I can see the creative part of it being very tied into my desire to travel and explore new things and see new things. I can spend the day working on a website and I'm finished at the end of the day, and I visually see the differences. Plus, if you're doing adventure tourism websites,
the imagery is exciting. It's not, and I'm not, retail's different. Just for me, one of the benefits is, if I'm building a website for a client that does African safaris, it's looking for pictures is fun.
Yes.
As opposed to, the shade of red on these shoes isn't quite right. I'm going to spend an hour on, change the. So I'm curious for you if that resonates for you, or are you more on the creative side of it, or?
I'm definitely both. I mean, having a marketing background, you have to have analytics in everything that you do, because it's like, if you can't track it, then you can't,
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen, and you don't know how to, what's the attribution to it. So I definitely have an analytics mindset. But where I struggle, it's as an entrepreneur, it's that super tactical execution piece that can be challenging, right? So, understanding how many social platforms do we have now? I mean, a dozen. It's painful. So, and understanding Google SEM and knowing what kind of Google marketing needs to happen, like being an expert across multiple platforms is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So, I know my limitations. I know what I'm good at. And sometimes it is not that. I can't be an expert of everything. So my superpower is, I think, vision, coming up with product ideas for the website, meaning design, understanding UX, directing a team. I'm good at that. Where I struggle is kind of that, as you were saying, like, drilling down into very tactical execution. That can be a challenge.
There's so much. I had learned some website stuff, some technical skills kind of coming up through the ranks and doing several different things. And when I started the podcast and decided, okay, I'm stepping back into this space, I'm completely open book. Anybody that's listening to this, like, Jason, I don't know why you're saying this, but there were several areas I really did not know much about. But I built my website. I'm like, okay, I need to be able to do search engine marketing, search engine optimization. I need to do social media. Because I'm like, these are what people are looking for. So I built this website with all these things. And then I'm like, I really don't actually want to do any of that. But I also see that those are things that, you can hire people.
Yeah.
Person that maybe is really good at search engine optimization, maybe doesn't really want to have conversations with clients,
right.
So it's like, okay, obviously I like having conversations with clients. Most of my guests on the show are potential clients, and pretty much all my clients have been on the show. So it works for me. But if I'd much rather spend 8 hours recording podcast episodes than 1 hour of doing SEO.
I hear you. It's brutal. Yeah. And, you need it. You have to, otherwise nobody can find you. But I couldn't agree more. That is always the biggest challenge is, how to be an expert in all. And it's truly impossible. So you have to pick your challenges. And yeah, I get it.
And surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in those areas.
Always. Hiring is the best thing you can do is find people that are good at their jobs. Mm-hmm. And let them run with it. Know your strengths, know their strengths, and know your limitations. We don't have finite budgets, so something's going to have to maybe not happen, and you have to figure that out.
Time is a challenging one.
Yes.
I've caught myself many times. I'm like, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I should not be doing this right now. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. Which, by the way, your link to your website is going to be in the show notes, and it's a beautiful website. I mean, it's really, really nice.
Thank you.
I was like, man, that's pretty cool. So if for no other reason to go to her website, just go take a look at her website, because it looks great. It might, if you care about websites, most tour operators have websites. Obviously, I'd love to chat with them as well, but go look at Kim's website because it looks great. So Kim, we've discussed a bunch of different things. I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff as well, and probably could just come back and keep talking. But tell me, what should I have asked, or what did I forget to ask, or what do you want to make sure that our listeners know about you, the world, your philosophy, AtlasGuru, anything that you want to put out there before we wrap up?
Touched on it. I do welcome tour operators and travel advisors. Hit me up. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just LinkedIn, Kim Bennett. And I'd love to partner with people if they want to showcase their travels and their trips. I'm happy, to do something with them. So I think that the ultimate goal is storytelling on amazing experiences. And that's what we're trying to do, is that we're trying to give travelers incredible experiences and have them find what works best for them, whether it's working with an advisor, whether it's just exploring. There's lots of different opportunities.
I love that. And I can't not make the connection to why we're doing this podcast. It's the same thing. It's just to connect. I'm not getting paid a dime to do this podcast. Yeah, I end up, connecting with people that we do projects, but it really was that idea of just connect people. Let's give them stories about the people. If they hear an interesting story from someone that is a bicycle guide in Romania, and they've always wanted to go to Romania and they like riding bikes, then great. They make a connection. They go to the website, they connect, and I may or may not ever even know about it. And that's okay. It's just about, it sound cheesy, but it's about making the big world feel just a bit smaller. And I really appreciate you coming on and having a conversation and basically having a very similar goal, what I'm working on. So I look forward to connecting you with some tour operators, the planners, and some of my clients as well. So Kim, thanks for coming on the show.
Loved it. Thank you so much, Jason.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.